I'm going to start this episode and possibly this new series off by just shocking everybody and showing how repetitive the fire narrative is. A key that we have found right here on this channel. A key that, in my opinion, is a nod to the group that set all of these narratives up and put them into place, while attempting to explain how these incredible buildings all over the world that were clearly built before our civilization got here, and attempt to fit them into their fabricated timeline. And I'm gonna make this game even harder for myself and put a rule in place. And if you all enjoy this game where I go to a city and see how many old world buildings that I can find that supposedly went up in flames, let me know in the comments below. I'll make it into one massive playlist. So the one rule I'm going to put in place for this game is that I cannot leave the city that we are discussing. And in this case, it is Edinburgh, Scotland. Every single one of these items of interest that I'm about to show will be within a single city. Are you ready to have your mind blown? Here we go. Fettes College, established in 1870, 154 years ago. Following serious fires, the swimming baths were rebuilt in 1890, and the chemistry laboratory was rebuilt 7 years later. Forth Bridge, opening 134 years ago, where 3 passed away in a fire. Advocates Library, opening in 1689, so we are told. 335 years ago, predating the power tool by 206 years, where Thomas Hill Jameson had to deal with a fire that damaged thousands of books in 1875, with all of these mysterious fires coincidentally coming right around the exact same time, which is very interesting in itself if you ask me. The Theatre Royal, Edinburgh, Scotland, opened in 1769, which marked the very first building on the incredible Prince's Street, which we have shown in episode 67. The whole street is straight out of the old world, and I can't wait to get back there and see it. This theater was rebuilt in 1830 by another Thomas. But why was it rebuilt? What happened to the first one? Are you still on the fence? Should I show you how these narratives are all connected all over the world, all put into place by the same group, and have been waiting for us to uncover this information for decades? Are you ready to have some fun? When the theater burned down in 1865 and was rebuilt 3 times in 1865, 1875, and 1884, each time retaining the patent. And I'm not done. The narrative goes on to say that it was ultimately destroyed by a fire in 1946, a 4th and final fire, and was not rebuilt when we were all here to see them attempt to put this place back together. Greyfriars Kirk, when they found it in 1620, 404 years ago, in a time period where we have shown in episode 63 that the population worldwide was much smaller and much closer to 12 million people worldwide. Yet we are told that palaces with no power tools were going up no problem. No education programs, no shipping companies. All of this was not an issue. And the mainstream narrative thinks that we should all just overlook this and simply accept what they tell us every step of the way. Now, I understand that these numbers could be off slightly, but the overall chart that we are given by the mainstream history, this chart, it shows that the world population was basically nobody compared to what it is today for thousands and thousands of years, telling us it was in the millions in the year 0, and then 600 million in 1700 worldwide, and finally 1800 hits, so we can start being attracted to people and we can finally have a kid. When this is complete nonsense in my opinion. To clear this up, I also don't think that we are told the true population total. But again, this is all in my opinion, and you are free to form your own opinions as always. So, found in 1620, after it was gutted by a fire in 1845. Another 1800s fire, yet again. Remember, every single one of these fires, all of these buildings, they are all in Edinburgh. So alarms should be going off at this point. Not every single Dunkin' Donuts goes up in flames. Yet, so many old world palaces that look like they're straight out of Disney Plus light up in flames. So of course, I'll keep going because we need to make sure that there isn't a single person still on the fence after this episode. Holyrood Palace, completed in 1678, where they just have to put this nod into the story. In November 1650, the palace was damaged extensively by a fire. Staying here in Edinburgh, of course, we now have the Inch House, completed in 1617, when another fire destroyed a grand staircase 45 years ago. And of course, no word on how that grand staircase was just lit up in flames. And we all know how often our staircases just go up in flames. No. Jenner's, a well-established department store located on Prince's Street, where the building is currently undergoing restoration, where we all know that restoration is destruction. What an incredible building. The detail on this thing is mind-blowing. When they founded the store in 1838, but its original building was destroyed by a fire in 1892. Are you kidding me? There was a building here on this site before this masterpiece. The very next year, 1893, they pick out an architect and open this building up 2 years later. No problem at all. This is incredible. And we know these fires are still going on today. We have shown this so many times. Attempts to destroy the old world and remove them from our view, just like that staircase in the Inch House. On 23 January 2023, a fire broke out at the rear of the empty building. And nobody knows how the empty building started on fire, of course. South Leith Parish Church, a church that they found in 1483. Which is all fully documented. The paperwork is in hand. The shipping costs were paid for by wire transferring the local cat. And I know this one is not an actual fire, but it was too hard to pass up when the church was damaged by English artillery fire. And this was probably, maybe, it might have been, but will forever be a mystery, probably when the eastern parts were destroyed. This all happening in 1560, the same exact time as when they finally got the color blue and red for their duck feathers. This was the booming 1560s, remember. Tron Kirk, built in the 17th century, where it used to be a church, but now used as a local gift shop. Where this site is very interesting, when a 3D survey was conducted 3 times, showing that a civilization occupied this area before the church was built, and they were all wiped out. So in 1974, the same year that the first 3D survey was conducted, they ended up ripping the church floors apart and excavating the entire floor area. And then the building was refloored in 2004. The Tron was supposedly erected 377 years ago by the Royal Master Sin. And in 1785, they start the destruction, removing both side aisles. 1828, the new spire was constructed to replace the original that was destroyed in the Great Edinburgh Fire of November 1824. And we know this building is much bigger than we can see under the floor. When they go on to say archaeological excavations took place under the church, revealing foundations of more buildings. And back to this Great Edinburgh Fire that we were just told about. A fire that destroyed 400 homes, 24 tenement blocks, all completely destroyed by the Great Fire in 1824. And then out of nowhere, they just blow another building up with a cannon. And could you imagine how many people must have been caught up in this massive fire? Can you imagine the devastation of this massive fire? A time period before cars to escape. Could you imagine the amount of people that would not have been able to escape. I mean, it must have been hundreds and thousands of people. Wait, what? What is this? Wait. 13 people? What? Not only are we told that they all escaped the flames and actually burning to a crisp, but we all understand that it only takes 2 to 10 minutes from the smoke from the fire to make a person pass out or even die. And this reminds me a lot of the Baltimore Great Fire, where everybody was just fine. Or 1889, when Seattle lit up in flames. 25 blocks. Everybody was totally fine. Not a single issue. Or the Galveston Great Fire in Texas in 1885, where I guess everybody was just all professionals at escaping great fires. Master building architects and master great fire evacuators. Just incredible people in the 1800s. Okay, one more for fun. The Great Fire of Toronto. Again, nobody. We all understand that the mainstream narrative is giving us stats and stories that aren't logical. And we can even go over to this random tower, the Cramen Tower, still located in Edinburgh, where in the 1970s, they seemed to be in full panic mode. Excavating this place as well, finding more things that they call medieval, when we know that it was really from the previous civilization. And in 2011, it was damaged by a fire. The Edinburgh Festival Theatre opened in 1892. In May of 1911, a disastrous fire on stage happened, where 11 people backstage alone didn't make it. Yet nobody in these great fires had any issues, which we know this doesn't add up at all. The Iverleith House, where they tell us that construction began in 1773 and wrapped it right up 1 year later, 250 years ago. We are supposed to believe that this was normal. And of course, the city buys the house in 1877 after restoration work, following a fire. Now, I'm wondering at which point do alarms go off for someone that the mainstream history is possibly not as true as they once believed. And in my opinion, a massive lie to explain away these buildings that were not built by our civilization, hiding a massive population that had the tools and technology to construct this way all over the world. Are we there yet? Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to keep going just to make sure we have everybody on board for the future episodes. The Lock End House, built around 1820 until 2016 when a fire burned out the roof. St. Mary's Cathedral, Edinburgh, we are told was built in a single year from 1813 to 1814. And in 1892, a fire at the neighboring Theatre Royal that we talked about required them to make changes to this cathedral. Mayfield Salisbury Church, formerly known as the Mayfield North Church. It is located in a district of Edinburgh called Newington, built in just 4 years, from 1875 to 1879, nearly 20 years before the power tool, with extensive renovations carried out in 1969 following a major fire which destroyed most of the roof. Even the South Bridge holds a fire, where in 2002, the Cowgate Fire destroyed a section of the original buildings. And remember, when they destroy these buildings today, when we are all here to see it, with a mysterious fire, do you think they get to collect an insurance check? Do you think that it also destroys the old world building at the exact same time? Removing it, so that they no longer have to explain it into this fabricated timeline that they've made up. St. Margaret's School, established in 1890, when 13 years later, in December of 1903, a fire broke out at the East Suffolk Road building. So today, we are not just covering one city. We are going to be exposing 3. I also think that doing this for 3 more cities is going to show anybody in the world that may have still been on the fence after looking at Edinburgh, Scotland. We are going to show the world that this is no fluke, and that this fire narrative is worldwide and a massive key. So today, we are going to start things off with the city of Milan, Italy. And a quick recap of the rules to this game. I cannot leave the city that we are focused on for every single fire that is discussed for today. Every single fire will be located in the city that we are talking about. Are you ready to show the world that the mainstream narrative is full of patterns, full of coded messages, nods to this group that put them into place, all connected throughout the world? Well, here we go. The Basilica of San Lorenzo, located in Milan, a structure that we are told was constructed in Roman times. Well, maybe, because they tell us that it was built between the late 4th and early 5th centuries. But the exact date is, of course, you guessed it, uncertain. And we have no idea who commissioned it. So everything that is given is all according to scholars. You know, the people that are supposedly superior to us. People that just know all about these things. People that were never even there to see it actually happen. These incredible scholars tell stories. They tell tales that nobody else could ever even think of. Things that the archaeologists wouldn't even touch. Saying that this was built by Augustus of the West. This is the fire games, so let's get to it. The scholars tell us the 11th and 12th centuries were marked by numerous disasters, fires in particular. Now, I have a running total of the amount of fires that we have found in this episode, like you saw in the first one, but we will also have another counter for the entire fire game series. After we cover multiple cities, the number is just going to get undeniable to the general public. In my opinion, it is going to open the doors for anyone that is on the fence about the mainstream narrative and give them an understanding that there is something massive going on here. The odds that every single KFC burns down in a single city is 0%. Yet we find so many buildings in one city that look incredible, sitting right in front of us, that have gone up in flames, but are still here, looking better than ever. Santa Maria del Carmen, where we are told that this building was built in 1446, 578 years ago. And of course, the narrative just couldn't help itself but to know all about the 1330s, when they say that the first one, however, was destroyed in a fire. Basilica di Santa Stefano Maggiore, where the original church was built around the year 417, 1,607 years ago. We have this all documented. No, we don't. And 653 years later, on the dot, it was destroyed by a fire in 1070 and quickly rebuilt by those 1,075 people. San Bernardino All'Ossa, a church in Milan, in 1210, when an adjacent cemetery ran out of space. A room was built to hold bones. And you know, they have all of this written down in their local journal. So they just attach a church, no problem at all, in 1269. This was simple stuff back then, according to the mainstream narrative. You know, 755 years ago, when they were just born with the attaching churches to room skill, just embedded in their DNA. But once 1900 hits and the video camera comes around, this skill is just gone. And then they did a nice touch-up renovation job in 1679. And about 30 years later, you guessed it, it was destroyed by a fire in 1712. When we all know that this church that we're looking at is the original church. These stories are just that. In my opinion, they are tales. They are attempts to fit these incredible buildings into this insane timeline that we're given. Here is the ceiling to this place. It's incredible. The Royal Palace of Milan, where this was the seat of government in the Italian city of Milan for many centuries. Today, it serves as a cultural center and has exhibits. And in the 1600s, we are told that they finally completed it, the first of a series of theaters built in Milan, only to be lost to a fire. and replaced. And we're just getting started. On the night of 24 January, 1695, a fire destroyed the court theater again. They fixed it all up and completed it in 1717. And of course, 6 years later, in 1723, a new fire accident damaged the ceremonial halls of the palace. And the incredible part about all of this, I've only seen it where they tell you who it was that actually started the fire and how it was done with proof. Enough times to count on my hand. There was just a fire and that was it, according to the mainstream narrative. So 3 fires from that palace. So we're gonna move on to the... Wait, what is this? Fire struck again, destroying the court theater on February 26, 1776. And in August 1943, the city was caught in heavy bombing, where it says even if the bombs only hit a small part of the roof. And in my opinion, just reading that, somebody was over there lighting this place on fire. Destroying these old world buildings is basically what they're trying to say, where it was not noted and quenched in time. The Teatro alla Scala, where they don't hesitate and just get right to the point that this is from the old world, where they give us the nod. A fire destroyed the previous theater in 1776 after a carnival. So this is the official story. Get ready. It burns down in 1776 when the new theater was built over a period of 2 years, and the theater was completed. 2 years to knock this out in the 1700s. Alarms should be ringing in everybody's head at this point. We all know that it takes our civilization like 2 years to build a sidewalk or any convenience store. This is a palace theater that stands the test of time, built in the 1700s in 2 years. And now it is time for our second city today, Melbourne, Australia. Let's start this off with the General Post Office that looks nothing like a post office. And in 1858, we are told a design competition was held where they had hundreds of people that were master architects. Of course they did. And without a doubt, one of the sketchiest stories I've ever heard, when shortly after the postal functions were moved into a smaller building, shortly after, a fire severely damaged the interior of the building. 1 day before, something massive happened in New York City. It's incredible, and a clear attempt, in my opinion, and possibly a successful attempt to destroy something inside this building. And I wonder what else was destroyed the day before the New York event that I was notified for whatever reason that I wasn't allowed to speak about in episode 59. So I'll just call it the New York event from now on. We all know what day I'm talking about. Here we have a prison that is clearly, in my opinion, from the old world. We see these kind of structures in Europe, where I was watching a comedy show. It was on the History Channel, and they call them castles when they are clearly prisons from the old world. So at least Melbourne knew how to repurpose it, where that sign is built by us, and it's a little crooked. HM Prison Pentridge, opening back up in 1851, after those master prison laborers threw this thing together with perfection. And this is what we were told. In 1987, we actually get a man pinned as the guy that started a fire. So now we can use my other hand and keep count of that stat. When Street Bomber Craig and 3 other inmates on the other side sealed off their section doors and set the place on fire, where Morris didn't make it. And this fire in this little prison was apparently more dangerous than the Baltimore Great Fire, and also more dangerous than the Toronto Great Fire, where $10 million in damages occurred, which is equivalent to $346.5 million today, and everybody was perfectly fine, according to the mainstream narrative. The Melbourne Town Hall, on 1 February 1925, a fire destroyed a large part of the town hall, including the main auditorium and pipe organ. And the arsonist was apparently a ghost. There's no mention of the individual that was just playing with matches inside the palace. The Block Arcade, a historic shopping arcade in the central business district of Melbourne, where all of this was constructed between 1891 in 1893. 2 years. And the whole thing was supposedly wrapped up and completed. Designed by architects 20 man is the master architect that got this job done. On Friday the 13th in 1889, a huge fire gutted the George's Emporium, and this random fire accelerated Fink's plans to get this palace here in 24 months, where basically nobody was there to see the grand opening in 1893, because we know that this thing was most likely already here, and there was no grand opening. The Yule House, built in 1932, because the previous building burnt down, and the insurance paid out, just like we've talked about so many times, where it looks like, in my opinion, they just went up to the top and engraved 1932 into the top and collected an insurance check. During the Great Depression, the Palace Theater, a theater that we are told replaces an earlier cinema on the exact same site, destroyed in a fire. The first one supposedly had construction begin in 1913, which was located on the exact same site, like we have seen so many times. In 1915, they converted the building, meaning that the first one was done in like a year or two. And they go on to say they converted it to a bunch of different things, trying to trip us up, when ultimately, in 1925, Griffin was employed for yet another remodel. And what do you know? Work was almost done. In 1926, the random fire destroyed the whole building. They somehow cleaned the whole thing up, and in 1927, the next one was done, which is logical and totally acceptable. No. The Regent Theater, supposedly built in 1929, when the cinema was subject to a disastrous fire. 29 April 1945, which destroyed the auditorium, organ, fly tower, and roof, where it's really starting to look like, all in my opinion of course, but looking like they were just saying there was a fire on the inside, where nobody could verify it, collecting the insurance check, and then keeping the building exactly how it was from the previous civilization, and rewriting the history in the meantime. And to give us our fourth city for this series, and to immediately show right off the bat that this was a worldwide massive narrative key, we will head to Dublin, Ireland, where this nod runs deep. We have the Aldborough House, built in 1795, where in 2013 it suffered fire damage in a random arson attack. The Custom House, we are told, was completed in 1791, where they say there was a previous custom house right here and needed to be replaced. When in 1921, the Irish Republican Army burnt down the custom house, where the interior was completely destroyed in the fire, and the central dome collapsed, and a large quantity of historical records were taken by the Irish Army. Oh, no. I mean, also destroyed in the fire. The Four Courts, located in central Dublin, completed 222 years ago, so they say. When April 1922 comes around, the National Army attacks the building, where the attack provoked a week of fighting in Dublin. In the process of the bombardment, the historic building was destroyed, where the west wing of the building was obliterated in a huge explosion, destroying the Irish Public Record Office, where they took thousands of years of archives away from the public eye. Oh wait, no. I mean, they were destroyed by the explosion and the ensuing fire. And they promised us they didn't steal the records, and they suggest the explosion was one big misunderstanding, and this was caused by the accidental detonation of their ammunition that was stored in that room, where thousands of years of archives were. So yeah, sounds pretty trustworthy to me. No. I mean, even the Guinness Brewery, who, in my opinion, got an old world building, this one went up in flames as well in 2009, when they say that they found it in 1759. Alright, it's time to have some fun. And time to go after this narrative, one after the next, showing its flaws to the world, rapid fire. Here we go. Built in 4 years, from 1814 to 1818, the building was destroyed by a fire. In the course of the rebellion, the Kildare Street Club, found in the year of the Constitution of 1782, when the club had planned to move from the old to the new building in 1861. But in November of 1860, there was a disastrous fire at the old clubhouse, where 15,000 books were destroyed. Linen Hall, a barracks that was used from the 1870s by the British Army, where in April of 1916, the barracks were set on fire by 1st Dublin Battalion, Irish volunteers, to prevent the British Army from using the site. The Manresa House, originally known as Granby Hall, and then Baymount Castle in 1783. It was the residence of the Bishop of Down and Connor, and in 1851, it was renovated by the sisters because the building was damaged by a serious fire that year. Parliament House, Dublin, with construction beginning in 1729, and the original domed House of Commons Chamber was destroyed by fire in the 1790s, and a less elaborate new chamber with a dome was rebuilt in the same location and opened in 1796. Royal Hibernian Marine School, completed in 3 years in 1773. The school building was damaged by fire in 1872, causing damage and resulting in the school moving premises, and the St. Mary's Abbey, established in the year 846, so we are told. And in 1303, a great part of the abbey and church was destroyed by fire. Many of the city records and court pleadings in the chancery stored in the abbey were, of course, destroyed. We are just getting started. This is, in my opinion, going to be one of the most insane stats where we are going to be able to show anybody in the world this series and hopefully have them see that something is extremely wrong with what we have been told, where in my opinion it is time for the majority of people to come together and see that these buildings hold a much deeper story, one that we are not being told about, and one that needs to be explored by all of us. We're back with round 3 of the Fire Games. A game that shows the whole world how repetitive the fire narrative is within our history all over the world. In my opinion, it is a nod to the Hidden Group that put these stories into place surrounding these old world buildings, a key that we have located right here on this channel. And today, we go even deeper. We will be going into Cleveland, Ohio. And a quick recap of the rules of this game. We cannot leave the city that we are discussing. Every single item of interest are located within this one city. And today, we'll be all about Cleveland, Ohio. We will have a counter for today's episode, as well as the all-time counter for this series, right on the screen as we go along. So let's get started. Edinburgh Hall, a building that we are told was constructed in 1881 to serve as the home of the Western Reserve College. The building was gutted by a fire. In June of 1991, the Alta House and the Alta Public Library, where a fire struck the Alta House portion. June 22nd, 1980, 9 days later, a second fire hits the building, where they go on to say that both fires were later believed to be arson. Although, over time, an electrical fault was found to be the cause of the first fire. And then random arsonists walking past the place just struck the building twice more in the following weeks. They say that the blazes were small, but down in the very next paragraph, they let us know that the city officials determined that the damage was too extensive, and Alta House officials decided to tear down the structure. Now, could this be any more obvious? That they found something and needed to destroy it. This is incredible. Oh, and did we all catch it? In 1895, billionaire oil man agreed to fund the construction of a settlement house, and it was named the Alta House. So this is no regular building, in case you were wondering. Body block, clearly destroyed by our renovation tactics. Built in 1893, we are told. And randomly, right after, in 1897, it suffered a severe fire. Remember, the odds that nearly every single old world structure just lights up in flames all over the world, randomly in the same week 5 times. And they never find the guy who did it. Or there's just a faulty light switch, and it burns the stone building down, including the stone fireplace that has had a fire in it 5,000 times. That same fireplace gets blown into 20 pieces and thrown across the road. The odds of this happening is 0%. Yet, we are given the fire narrative over and over and over, proving, in my opinion, that it is a clear code. Cedar Glen Apartments, again, located in Cleveland, Ohio, when in 1956, a major fire struck the building. The blaze erupted in the kitchen of the first floor of the empty penthouse. Randomly, an empty kitchen just lights up in flames. This is very normal. This happens all the time in our empty kitchens, right? No. Those empty kitchen fires are just a pain in the ass, and we're just getting started. Could it look any more out of the old world than this one? The local castle for our horse and wagon people, because they needed a castle in the 1800s. It was just in the budget. Gray's Armory, located at 1234 Bolivar Road. And why would they build this one? Well, because 2 years before its completion, in 1892, a fire destroyed the building that was there before this one. Fire in 1892. This one is completed in 1893. How many of us think that this would get done in that time frame? Let me know in the comments below. I know my local basic box style store right down the road took about 2 years to build. Now, I found this one interesting and made me realize there are a lot of buildings that don't hold a narrative. And when I saw that, it makes me think, what could they be hiding with the East Ohio Gas Company building? Oh, okay, just a massive explosion. When the East Ohio Gas Company explosion and fire took place in 1944, setting off the most disastrous fire in Cleveland's history. And I know it's a gas company, but I'm still counting it. And it also gives us more proof that we are correct, that there's something massive off with these great fires all over the world, where we have shown that thousands and thousands of buildings, hundreds of acres, have been destroyed and lit up in flames. Yet hardly anybody passed away. The Baltimore Great Fire, Portland Great Fire, Toronto Great Fire, Seattle Great Fire, Galveston Great Fire, Pittsburgh Great Fire. A total of 2 lives taken from all of these great fires. Yet here in Cleveland, Ohio, 1944, 130 people in just 79 homes. So you do the math. Something is extremely wrong with the Great Fire narratives. Either there were no people, or that count of 2 total people is a complete lie. And we are spot on with this. Check this out. The Euclid Avenue Christian Church, 2010, gutted by fire. And how did this one start? Where it has a storied history and suffered a terrible blow on Tuesday, when a fierce fire, perhaps, maybe, it might have been, perhaps, ignited by a possible bolt of lightning on a sunny day. Just absolutely shreds just any random building. No. Does this look like a bolt of lightning to you? Are you still on the fence? So Cleveland is filled with these buildings, and I'm gonna have to take a trip there. We have buildings that are no longer open to the public. A lot of great stuff here, including buildings that have interesting stuff going on. In the month of September, 23 years ago, we've seen where they've done things to buildings on this exact same day, all the way over in Australia. And of course, fires. So let's keep going. The Old Stone Church, Old Stone, very telling. A church that we are told was built on the exact same site as the prior building, which we have seen so many times. And this story gets crazy. They tell us that in 1853, the Congression had outgrown the original building, so a larger replacement was built on the same spot. The Romanesque Revival-style church, dedicated in August of 1855. So they knocked the old one down in 1853. And within 1.5 years, 42 years before the power tool, the new one is done and called Old Stone Church. And let's get to the best part. Just 19 months after it was done, on March 7th, 1857, fire struck the church. And I'm not done. Let's blow people's minds today and shred the mainstream narrative into pieces, exposing it forever. It was rebuilt in 1858, and the second fire occurred on January 5th, spreading to the church from the adjoining Wick Buildings Park Theater. The interior was gutted, and the new old stone church is here forever. And check this shot out one more time. When you find one, you will normally always find more. Just take a look behind it. They have been here all along, and we are finally seeing them. It is time for all of us to finally see the truth. It's incredible stuff. So here we have the Cuyahoga County Courthouse, which is impressive, and right next to the Cleveland Browns Stadium. And the Cleveland City Hall is right there, as well as these two, that if you're in the area, you're gonna wanna see. The Cleveland Public Library and the Howard M. Metzenbaum U.S. Courthouse. A lot of old world buildings right next to each other. And the Tower City Center over in the background. St. John's Church, Cleveland, Ohio, built in 2 years from start to finish. Can you believe this? That is like 60 years before the power tool. And what blows my mind is, why didn't they just say it took 10 years to build it? Why do they have to say that it takes 1 or 2 years and then has a fire? When thinking logically, this doesn't make any sense, and nobody would have ever questioned it. This is exactly why I say, I really think that they were waiting to see who would find this stuff. It feels too much like some sort of game, especially when this Gothicized meeting house has been rebuilt twice. Once after a fire in the 1880s, and again after a tornado. St. Michael, the Archangel Church, where this is the 40th church on this site. No, I'm joking. But would any of us be shocked? The original church and school building were constructed in 1883, but burned on June 29th, 1891. So 8 years of good use, lighted up with somebody just accidentally lighting it on fire, and we'll never know who it was. We have no idea how or why that fire started, and there was no lightning this time, or arsonist, no faulty light switches. The mainstream narrative is just off burning down palaces and not letting anybody know how it happened. Oh, and that happened while the new building was being constructed, of course. And the current church, the second one, which started in 1889, was completed 5 years ahead of schedule because Donkeys Incorporated was just out there knocking palaces out. 5 years ahead of schedule. And remember, this is all in one city. We have not left Cleveland, Ohio. And it's still continuing today. When we see that on March 7th, 2024, on East 36th Street, the church went up in flames. The Cleveland Fire Department says that the fire caused $100,000 in damages, and the historic church fire was, of course, ruled accidental. Now check this place out. Look at the top of this thing. This looks like a machine, if you ask me. St. Paul's Church, where, listen to this, founded in 1846, where a fire destroyed the structure before it was completed. Another mystery lightning bolt on a sunny day, burning down palaces. That would actually be more information than we're given. And get this, people throughout the whole city contributed funds to build a brick replacement in 1851. And we of course have a restoration project going on inside. St. Stanislaus Church, opening in 1891, where this one gives us the fakest depiction of the past I think that I've ever seen. Throughout all of this research, we have these horses sprinting across the lawn. Just your normal, everyday carriage ride through the front lawn. Not only did this thing get hit with a tornado, supposedly, but in 2002, the pastor was killed by Brother Daniel. And to hide the crime, Daniel Montgomery set the parish and offices on fire. Montgomery later admitted to the crime and was sentenced to life in jail in 2005. So we officially finally have a guy pinned to the fire. I can't believe we were actually given the guy that burned down the building. I'm in shock. The Franklin Castle, built in 2 years. This is just an average time frame for the 1800s because they had no distractions, of course. And they were very hard workers, even though they didn't have a power tool and no training. In 1881 to 1883, this thing is all done. Michelle buys the Old World Castle in 1999. Unfortunately, that same year, the exact same year, a fire badly damaged the castle, though extensive repairs were done. The house restoration could not be completed, and in 2004, a new owner cleaned the place up, and the property was damaged again in March 2011 when the castle was damaged in a fire. And again, they have no idea who or how these fires are starting, which is insane. So the mainstream narrative is back to not knowing things. Newburgh Town Hall, Cleveland, Ohio, suffered a fire in November of 1984 and was demolished in 1985. St. Joseph's Church, a landmark church that was built in 1893, supposedly, and the church was closed in 1986. While plans for the future of the structure were being discussed, the church sustained a destructive fire in 1993 and was demolished. And at this point, we have found 19 fire narratives. Within a single city, we have found a total of 70 fires for the Fire Games playlist. And we can see that there is a clear pattern, a clear code that is fully understood at this point by us. We also know that the amount of destruction that has taken place to the old world structures would most likely blow our minds. The amount of demolitions that have taken place and will never be built back are in the thousands, and we know this. This research is so important for everybody to be aware of these buildings that are still here and fully understand these coded narratives. It's time for everybody in the world to understand this information, to be able to see through the nonsense that we have been told our entire lives. And once you know the truth, there is no going back. You thought we were done? No, not yet. Something that will show you all that these fires happened in the past, but are still going on today. We are forming a team here, a team of people that are looking out for these structures of the previous civilization all over the world. We all understand what to look for at this point. And when this fire took place at the Stock Exchange building in Copenhagen, Denmark, I was no longer alone. I must have had 50 people commenting in the videos, messaging me, tagging me, and posting about this fire. We are seeing what's going on around us now, and that's important because being able to see is the first step. And eventually, the bigger that we grow, I'm hoping there will be a way to put an end to this destruction, because we have said this so many times, and it is so true. These buildings do not need our help. They do not need our current civilization's renovation tactics. We know that our civilization calls it renovation when it is clear destruction of the old world's work. We understand that these 1600 dates are complete nonsense at this point. It is from the previous civilization. This building was a very popular tourist attraction, of course. It was most noted for its distinctive spire, shaped as the tails of 4 dragons twined together. Dragons. We understand that dragons have been mentioned in many so-called ancient or medieval texts. Ancient and medieval, 2 words that mean previous civilization in my opinion. Where on April 16th, 2024, the building was badly damaged by fire, which toppled the spire. You know, the one that was showing us 4 tails of dragons. Any clues of the previous civilization are being wiped out and destroyed. We have seen this so many times. And how many buildings did we not see before this research that were destroyed and are gone now? When we read this final article and show the world that this is still going on today, a fire has engulfed Copenhagen's former stock exchange, one of the oldest and most well-known buildings in Denmark's capital, causing its spire to collapse onto the roof. The historic 17th century construction, also known as Borsen, had been under renovation when the blaze broke out. This is incredible and even more eye-opening. Here we go. The cause of the fire was, you guessed it, unclear.